It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Yeah. No fear here in Declare Your Independence of me, Ernest Hancock. And we're going to talk to James Corbett, CorbettReport.com. Yep, I was eating. I wasn't ready. All right, this is what we're going to be doing. He is now known as Professor Corbett. This is Professor James Corbett or Professor Corbett, Professor James. What's your preference there, James?
Professor Corbett, please. Let's keep it formal.
Professor Corbett, because I am so sick of, he's doing some teaching and having someone that really understands the context of what he's talking about, the details. He gives you all the notes, the bibliography, the source of everything. And so professors were that good. So I know they get all anal about, I'm a professor. I don't know how the hell they get that. Last time we talked, I pulled up the definition of professor. And, I'll do that now because damn it. And I go, well, hell, that's freaking James right there. Professor, define. All right, here we go. Just so that we are on the same page here. A professor is a teacher and researcher at a college or university, typically specializing in a specific academic field, or all of them. It term encompasses various ranks, assistant, blah, 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 blah. So then we go down. Wait a minute. Okay, go down. Who can be called a professor? James, that's who. A person is called in virtue of official. I don't care. I look at. God, where is it? Enough. Definition. All right, here we go. Let's get definition. That'd be better. I'll give a crap what they say. One that professes. Well, he professes. A faculty member of the highest academic rank in the institution higher education. Open source education.online. He's the head professor. Get over it. A teacher at a university, college, or sometimes secondary school. Open source education.online. That qualifies. One that teaches or professes special knowledge of an art, sport, occupation requiring skill. Got skills. It's Professor Corbett. Everybody just get over it, okay? I'm just saying. All right, so that's what we're doing. Professor Corbett. Now, one thing, while I got this up here, we had 9/11 kind of got put on the back burner because of the assassination of Charlie Kirk on the 10th. And even Tucker Carlson that dropped a 5-part series. I already saw the first 3, and I just haven't had time to get the other ones. And for those of us that have been doing this a long time, it's kind of, we know this stuff. But the one thing I did not know was Brennan, how deep Brennan was into this stuff. Talk about ex-CIA guy under Obama, Brennan, and what his role in all this before we go to the other issues, because that one kind of surprised me. What do you know, James?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, good point. So, first of all, in my first official position here as professor... Oh, you got it right, sorry. I was going to say that lower third wasn't looking right. I'm not Sterling Lujan, but you got it. Good job. You're right to point out with this Tucker Carlson series, I've only seen the first one.
Oh, let me
it is...
That. Oh, where was it? You had it that I was doing that? That's a Donna thing, Okay, well, I guess
it's okay.
Right.
It looked right the last time I saw it, but should I turn off my video, or is our connection okay?
You're good now. I turned mine off.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So the Tucker Carlson thing, I've only seen the first part so far, and as you say, it's nothing groundbreaking or amazing for people who've been in this for 20 years, but for the millions of people who haven't, it's at least something. And I have more to say on that, what people might say about this in my recent edition of Solutions Watch called Yes. You know, it's a good point, because I guess I did know this, but I never really consciously dwelled on it. But I have been talking for years and years and years about J. Michael Springman. He was the consulate officer in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia in the 1980s, back when, of course, the CIA was involved in its biggest ever operation up to that point, Operation Cyclone, which became whatever it became in the 1980s, to fund the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to fight the Soviets, right? It was a big covert program, $1 billion a year or whatever. They were giving them Stinger missiles and all that stuff. What could go wrong, right? And glorified in Charlie Wilson's War and other, Hollywood propaganda. And so I've talked about J. Michael Springman's experience at the Jeddah consulate in that time, where he was in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. He was a consulate officer that was there to essentially interview people that were coming in for visas to travel to the United States. And when there was somebody who, they couldn't get their story straight, they were a student, but they didn't know what school they were going to, they were visiting family, but they couldn't say what city they were in, all of that stuff. His job was to say, nope, you're not getting the visa, next. And that's what he did. And when somebody had, all the paperwork in order and everything looked okay, you get the visa. And so he started to find, again, this was in the 1980s, but it was at that Jeddah consulate, he started to find that he was turning people down for visa after visa after visa. And then somehow someone above him in the consulate office there was approving those visas after he had disapproved them. And so he wanted to know what was going on. He eventually found out, of course, that all of the upper ranks of the consulate office were CIA, as they generally are. And they were the ones that were overturning it. It was his boss that was overturning all his rejections.
Who is this guy
approvals.
that was sharing this information with you?
This is J. Michael Springman, and he wrote a book called Visas for Al-Qaeda. I want to say that's the name of the book. You can look that up. I've interviewed him a number of times. I did a 9/11 whistleblower video about him, so I've talked about him a bunch because his story's important.
Professor James, man, hell, I had never even heard of this guy.
So it was back when after he quit and he got back to the U.S. and he started talking to Joseph Trento, who's a journalist there in Washington, knows people. And that's when he started to get the real story of what was going on there. He was essentially being overturned on these visa rejections because the CIA was rubber stamping visa approvals for their golden boys, which were the Arab Afghans, so-called, as in the Mujahideen, Osama bin Laden's golden boys back there in the 1980s, fighting the Soviets, who they were flying into the U.S. so that they could do training in the U.S. for their fight in Afghanistan. And there's a whole story there that ties into Ali Mohammed, who's this crazy Al-Qaeda, Green Beret, CIA, FBI, quadruple agent. It's just the craziest story of all. But anyway, so that was what was happening in the 1980s. And fast forward to the late 90s into 2001, and suddenly there's a visa program that is essentially rubber stamping visas for people to go into the U.S. And specifically at that exact same consulate office in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia, was where the numbers vary, and I did hammer it down once, and I forget. It's something like 14 of the 9/11 so-called hijackers, the accused hijackers, got their visas to enter the United States specifically at that consulate office. And at the time that they were getting their visas, the person running that office, the CIA chief in Jeddah, was Brennan. And, of course, Brennan went on, as you say, to be Obama's CIA man. So, yeah, deeply embedded in what was going on there. And it's still a very, very, very big question of, why were these guys getting their visas rubber stamped? Why did every single one of them get basically whisked into the country including, of course, al-Maidar and al-Hazmi, who were already under CIA surveillance. They were known terrorists. They knew they had visas to enter the U.S., and they didn't inform the FBI. All that story that Tucker gets into. But yeah, Brennan being the head of the consulate office there in Jeddah in 2001 is significant.
I heard that they were, being pushed through by CIA, blah, 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 but Brennan never came up to me. It was, where did that information drop? How'd you find that out? Where was that? And how come I've never heard it before? I was like, what the crap?
It's a good question. I'm sure I've probably read it in one of my books. I wonder if I specifically mentioned it by name in my documentary. Let me find out. For people who don't know, I did a 5.5-hour documentary on the secret history of Al-Qaeda. It's at corbettreport.com/Al-Qaeda. If you want a real professor learning, that's where you go. And I am searching, and you know what? Brennan's name is not in that document because that particular piece of information didn't, I guess, escaped my attention at the time. I'm sure it is in one of the many books that I've read on this subject. I just didn't pick up on it at the time.
Of all, I'm like, having it in the background, I'm, watching it, I'm laying there, doing the computer, whatever. And it was such the focus of those guys. And I'm like, whoa, where did this escape me? How did that happen? That John Brennan was, because it's in light of, we have Brennan, Comey, who is the NSA guy? Poindexter? Was it Poindexter? Am I getting that right? Who was the NSA at the time during Obama?
Poindexter? No, Poindexter was the DARPA information awareness guy. I know who you mean. I can see his face even. The name is the name. I'm forgetting the name off the top.
I'll look it up. But the thing that I'm thinking is that Comey is indicted now, and of course he was doing that crap, 87-47, whatever, kill Trump, and, and shells on the beach, and he's kind of doing his little dog whistle stuff and secret handshake signal code word of whatever the hell he's doing. And I'm going, this is weird. And Brennan and Comey admitted that they were communist. And I was like, what the crap? It was at a, here, let me turn this on. It was at a black college or something. There was someone that came up and said, well, what if we, being socialist oriented kind of, could we work for the CIA? To Brennan, head of the CIA. And he goes, I don't see why not. I voted communist. I've been a communist. Communist. And I'm like, whoa, what the crap? So this has been, I guess common knowledge to, certainly people in Washington, certainly Obama, certainly, these guys. There it is. Okay, Donna noticed it. She's going, you got it wrong, man. There it is. Sorry. The fact that they can be at such high levels and it's being obvious, I'm wondering who's guarding the hen house. I mean, what is this? It was like they were proud of it. They wanted to encourage this type of behavior, this participation, this inclusion. And I'm going, now that Comey has been indicted, we got Brennan being the guy letting in 9/11 people. 9/11 kind of got pushed back because of the Charlie Kirk thing. It's just now this week starting to come out again. You have the lost art of yes and, your 9/11 piece up there. What is that about?
So exactly as you say, the 9/11 stuff is coming to the fore again because of people like Senator Johnson and Congressman Weldon and Congressman Kucinich and others who are coming out. And, for example, we're at that 9/11 Turning the Tide event in Washington on September 11th, which Tucker Carlson was supposed to be at, but he canceled, obviously, after Charlie Kirk. And maybe for good reason. Maybe making public appearances in the days after that might have been a bit risky. So anyway, he canceled his appearance there, and and is now, I guess his 9/11 series has been delayed from its original schedule or whatever, but it's coming out now piece by piece, at least online. So I've been seeing for the past several weeks, as there's been some momentum around the 9/11 issue for the first time in years, many years, because the possibility, at least, of some sort of Senate subcommittee investigation or something along those lines. There's a task force that's working on the Epstein files, the JFK files, the RFK files, and, oh yeah, the 9/11 files. So there is some movement that's happening on that. But of course, the counter to that are the people saying, oh, it's all limited hangout, controlled opposition shills. They're not going to reveal anything. Okay, fair enough. I don't think we should wait and hold our breath for the government to investigate itself. even if there is, even if Senator Johnson and everyone else is completely on the up and up and they're totally committed to this, I don't think they're going to get very far with their investigation. But my response to that is to say, okay, whatever. Even if these people are completely controlled opposition, they're a limited hangout, they're trying to keep you from the truth, the point is not to go, oh, stupid shills, and oh, I denounce them, and they're not talking about the space beam hologram, whatever I think about 9/11, whatever rabbit hole people have disappeared down. The point is to go, yes, there are real problems with the 9/11 official story, and here are some of them. So the idea is, from the improv world, for anyone who has ever tried improv or even learned about it, when you do improv comedy, the number one rule is you don't say no. You don't counteract what someone is putting out on the table. If somebody says, I want a divorce, and somebody else says, well, think about the children, the first person doesn't go, we don't have any children, because that ends the improv, right? Suddenly you can't go anywhere with that. No, you have to accept whatever the other person is saying and add to it. And the idea is in conversation. When you are in conversation with somebody and they present something, it can be 1,000 times more effective. Instead of just immediately saying, no, you're wrong, you're stupid, no, that's not the way it is. Instead, you accept what they're saying, and then you add to it. Yes, there are problems with the 9/11 story, and here's some real data and information and evidence, and here's a Corbett documentary about this, or something along those lines. It's a way of opening up a conversation instead of shutting it down. So that was what I was trying to demonstrate.
This is, but with what new facts? Just reiterating all the stuff that you had, the other 5 documentaries that you got there. I mean,
right, exactly right. In exactly the same way that, for example, I don't think Tucker Carlson series is going to reveal anything drastically new that we didn't know. I don't, it's not like I have some drastic new information that's breaking news about 9/11, but I have done, years and years and years of work, and I've got all these documentaries and a book and everything else about it. Why not present that to people? Because I think part of the point of this is, one thing that people, I think, don't consciously think about enough is that, yes, I understand people have been on their high horse and have been talking about this for years and years, and look, I've talked to my friends about it, and they all laugh at it. It's a lost cause. Yes, but the reason why people are saying no and rejecting this information is not necessarily because they have calmly and rationally considered all the evidence and decided, that doesn't add up. It's 99% of the time, it's because there is not social proof for them to step out on that limb. As in, you're crazy if you think about this. And everyone and everything they've heard from the mainstream and all of the authority figures has always said you're crazy for even thinking or asking a question. So I'm not going to ask any questions. No, you're crazy. But now that momentum is turning. And now you've got, sitting senators, the head of the subcommittee on investigations in the U.S. Senate. Is now openly saying WTC-7 was controlled demolition, and yeah, we've got to look into all these things. Great, that's a good thing. Now, let's feed them with information. So it's at this point where people, I think, will be receptive to this information, who otherwise beforehand would not have been receptive to it. I think that's progress of a sort, if we open the conversation in the right way instead of shutting it down immediately.
Yeah, but of course, we need to know the truth. Uncovering the secrets, exposing the lies. I mean, don't BS me. Just tell me what's up. But it's gotten to the point now that there's no faith in government. There's no trust. They're lying because their lips are moving. There is, Trump's here to save the day. He's gonna fix it, And I'm like, yeah, I'm not holding my breath. So this is the one thing, we saw, Sterling Lujan's name up there because I had done a show with him, and we did a 3-hour thing. He's a long-time crypto guy and looking at alternative ways of living, getting outside the system and so on. It was a 3-hour Friday. It was a really good show. And one of the points that he made kind of referenced you. It was now, can you imagine Satoshi Nakamoto coming out and he's going to present it to a regulator, CBS or something? I mean, it's because of the internet, you just bypass all that crap and then it just happens.
Yeah.
Open source education.online. You just go and you get the information. It is there. And I'm so hopeful for the future if we can make it to there. And now we got, I watched the presentation that Hegseth did with President Trump to all the generals. I don't know, hundreds of generals, from brigadier down. I'm like, how many generals do we got? I'm like, holy crap. They just keep adding up. This is like an accumulation pile. So they got a dose. And I'm wondering if you saw that, if you had any comment, or do you see that as a continuation of anything as we're going from, the realization of 9/11, the realization, of the lies, the realization of the petrodollar going away, the realization of here comes the greatest reset ever and you'll own nothing, here's your happy shot. All this stuff that's coming, what role did that play? What is it you think is going on?
Good question. I haven't actually watched that yet. I have only read about it, so I should and presumably will watch it. I'm not looking forward to that, but anyway, whatever. It's all part of the research. Don't say I don't do anything for you guys. But yeah, counter to what you said, people don't believe in government anymore. I would like to believe that, and I think there's at least, half the population there in the U.S. who definitely don't want anything to do with this particular administration. But all they want and all they can think about and all they're aiming towards is getting back into power in 2028. That's what it's about, guys. And meanwhile, the other half of the population, I think, is mostly on board with the government and cheering. Hey, look, they're doing things. Yay. They're ending the woke DEI and they're sending the troops out on the streets. Yay. Cheering it on as it happens. So I'm not so convinced that people are waking up en masse to the fundamental layer of this deception. And I think that's reflected in things like changing the Department of Defense back into the Department of War, or this type of theatrical, grandstanding in front of the generals, pumping their fists and pounding their chest about, we're at war with these wokes and we're going to win and we should be testing the military on the streets of the United States. I mean, just absolute madness, considering a couple of decades ago, this was everything the independent media at the time was warning about, martial law and the possibility of it. And now people are cheering it on because it's the good guys. So I think, there is obviously, there are a lot of people that are falling through the cracks now and starting to see the system because it is getting over the top. But at the same time, things are polarizing to such a degree that I think a lot of people are investing their identity in one side or another. They're either MAGA or they hate Trump with all their might, and they will fall into line with their political team. So really, if the question is, for example, so there's no new 9/11 info and maybe you can reach a few more people, but what's the point? The point to me has always been that false flag terrorism is essentially like a magic trick, right? It's like an illusion. Do you remember when David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear?
Yeah, I remember, on ABC or whatever it was.
Right. It was a big deal, right? Do you know how he did it?
Yeah, he did an elephant, too, or some other crap. Copperfield was, famous for that kind of crap, yeah.
Right. But do you know how he actually did it?
I don't think he did it, but I mean,
So you can watch on YouTube now, all the people have figured it out or sussed it out or the behind the scenes or whatever. That particular one, it was a rotating stage. It was slowly rotating, and with some mirrors and some trickery and some curtains, and then suddenly you can't see the Statue of Liberty anymore, but it's because they were looking at a different part of the sky. They just didn't know it. Anyway, the point is, once you understand how the trick is done, well, that's it. It's done. Like, okay. So it was just a trick. Right. Okay. You didn't actually make the Statue of Liberty disappear. Oh, wow. And I think false flag terrorism is like that. Once you understand,
after a while, you just go, there's just going to be another trick. I don't even care how you did it.
Exactly. And that to me actually is the progress, because once you break the staff of false flag terror, and once people fundamentally understand the trick, then it is much harder to do it again. Now, they can do it again. And for example, I would say after 9/11, obviously the scamdemic itself was a gigantic psychological operation that got a lot of people to willingly lock themselves in their own homes and clamor for more government protection and please save us with your vaccine juice and all of that. But again, I think they spent a lot of capital on that particular operation. And now people are, there's at least half the population in the U.S. who absolutely hates Fauci and everything that he did and stood for, and doesn't trust. Well, maybe now they do trust the CDC again, because it's RFK, right? So it's the good guys in charge. But anyway, there is now some healthy skepticism of so-called authorities that I don't think existed before this operation began and before people started talking about it. So I think there is progress that is being made. It is getting. I think their tricks have to get crazier and crazier, which doesn't mean they won't happen. But if we can get far enough in advance, remember when we were talking about, we need some kind of slogan about, nuclear war, we serve you no more, or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Nuclear war,
mushroom
comply
cloud.
no more.
Yeah, right. Something like that, right? Right?
Comply no more. I think that's what it was.
Well, that to me is the point of this. Yes, okay, it is good to know about what actually happened in 9/11. It is good to know those details. It is good to try to still pursue justice for those events. But in the meantime, we can hopefully wake people up to the scam and get them to understand the fundamental layer of the scam. What was 9/11 about? It was about a number of things, but one of them is, of course, the consolidation of the Homeland Security state and the carte blanche to reorder the Middle East and beyond. And once people understand that, hopefully they can understand, in the event of the next big spectacular attack that they're asking to change, it changes the world and everything will change overnight. People might be able to understand that maybe I shouldn't comply in this instance. Maybe I shouldn't just mindlessly rally around the flag. Maybe there is something else going on here. And I think that is the point of what this activism, at least in the short term, at least until we can imagine a world in which there is actual justice in some sort of actual court system or something for the perpetrators of these events.
It's always little things that maybe, kind of say that, well, people are just not whatever, was this. The history of government shutdowns is, there was like 10 shutdowns since 76, which kind of surprised me. And 20 funding gaps and whatever you want to call it. But 10, the only one I remember was like mid-90s. I remember when that had an impact on, stuff. It's a long story. But I'm going, this is what happened to me today. I go in and I'm like, I was doing something about Declaration of Independence. I was writing a thing and I wanted to get the exact quote. And while evils are sufferable, you'll suffer. And then at some point, it's intolerable and the people, whatever. So I wanted to look it up. So I go in there, National Archives, Declaration of Independence. Click it. Boom, I'm sorry. Due to the shutdown of the federal government, National Archives facilities are closed. Websites and social media are not being updated or monitored, and activities are canceled, and with the following exceptions, which remain open and operational, barring holiday closures. Federal record centers, including the museums only for Lyndon Johnson Presidential Library will be open until. And I'm going, what the hell's so special about Lyndon Johnson? So I don't even care anymore. I'm just whatever. This was a lockdown or a shutdown happened about a decade ago, I think it was, and it was we went to the lake in Washington State on the Columbia River. They have dams and they create lakes, and I think it's Roosevelt Lake up there, and we go to the marina. Get the boat out, getting ready to go out of the marina. They wait until we start going out. Boom! Here comes the rangers or whatever saying, I'm sorry, there's a shutdown. You can't go out on the lake. And I go, well, you're here. I guess you're not shut down that much. They're shut down enough to make sure you're shut down. That's what they do. So I'm just like, this is so, at some point when people go into the park, go into the national park, trying to access government services, what do you say you do here? And then they're presented with this shutdown crap. They're like, what the hell? So it's little things like that I think people are just not supportive. Now, I know you're thinking that, well, half of the people don't like Trump, so they equate Trump with the government. And so I don't think so. I'm just feeling just out in the people land out here in America and traveling around and talking to people that you had years ago, especially during COVID when they were supportive. Yeah, you're one of them, anti-science kind of. Well, not so much anymore. And it's becoming a big thing, for education. It's a big thing for, buying land and homesteading. A big thing for, buying from certain brands and not others. It's a big thing on healthcare. It's a big thing. It's happening. Are you feeling it at all that there's a tipping thing coming?
Well, you bring up a good point, because you're talking about going out there and actually talking to people. And obviously they're in the United States, but I'm here in Japan. So whatever I'm feeling here is a very, very different vibe than what you're feeling on the ground in America. So I will defer to you, because I think real world, actual experience with real human beings is more valuable than what I can garner from reading things online and seeing things online. Because never forget that most of what we are seeing online right now is algorithmically tailored. We are being spoon-fed things by algorithms that are designed to boost engagement. So they will send you stuff that is polarizing and maddening and whatever, gets you to want to argue. And that may or may not be reflective of reality. In a way, it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, I think, because those kinds of things play on themselves and then manifest in reality because people are so amped up from watching all the whatever, the gas station fights or whatever that fill their X feed suddenly becomes the things that they start manifesting in the real world. So there is some feedback loop there. But if you are hearing different things from people on the ground there, that's awesome, and I will defer to you on that.
Well, it's things like this. This story, South Park just exposed what mainstream media won't show you about Israel. I haven't even watched that episode yet. I usually, watch all of South Park because their commentary are so over the top. But it's entertaining, and it definitely gives you a view of America. That's damn. But the when it comes down to animation, and where you're getting some fresh perspective and oh my God, truth, damn, that's where you get things like, and we're going to take your money and put it in the market, and it's gone. I mean, so when you get this kind of understanding and revelation to, the 23-and-a-half-year-old just got out of college, with the debt, and all of a sudden everything that's wrong with the country is being exposed on South Park. I'm wondering what kind of reinforcement that is. And, that's a good question for you. Israel, that's a perfect example. Their ship is not, sailing that fast anymore. So I'm wondering what you think is going to be happening with Israel and Trump coming out where I'm not going to let them take Gaza. I got a hotel that needs to be built there or something. I have no idea what's going on there. I'm not paying that much attention intentionally. What do you know?
Well, what I do know is that people might have forgotten already, but a few weeks ago there was a sort of peace summit thing that was happening in Doha, where Hamas had been summoned there to start some sort of negotiations, right? That's going to happen with Israel. And so they were in Doha in Qatar, which was neutral third ground territory. And what happened? Israel actually launched airstrikes against Hamas leadership that was meeting there in Qatar. And that was, Israel bombing Qatar is a big deal. I know people just kind of the Middle East is all one big place or something. No, that's specifically a big deal because Qatar is specifically under American military protection. They have a security agreement of some sort. And so the question is, okay, can Israel just come in and airstrike a country and America is just going to watch? And the answer is yes. Yep. Ultimately, they didn't do anything about it because, Israel can do whatever it wants. And, it's Hamas. So who cares? And as a result of that, things are changing in the Middle East as people start to realize, oh, the American security guarantee means nothing. And who has been under the American security guarantee for at least half a century now, and the core of the petrodollar system, which has backed up the dollar since Nixon closed the gold window, it was Saudi Arabia. They were the engine of the petrodollar system, and precisely because they were under the American military security guarantee. So yes, of course, we'll denominate oil in dollars. We'll ship all our money back through the U.S. financial system, but Saudis looking at what happened in Qatar, and lo and behold, they say coincidentally, we've been working on this for some time, it's just a coincidence of timing, but just in the past couple of weeks, they just signed a security guarantee with Pakistan. So now Pakistan is actually guaranteeing Saudi with, by the way, their nuclear weapons, because, oh yeah, by the way, Pakistan is one of the nuclear states, right? So now there's a nuclear umbrella from Pakistan over Saudi Arabia, which really changes a number of things in the region and starts to put Pakistan potentially in much more of a regional role. And Saudi now has a nuclear umbrella from a completely different state. So, well, how does that complicate the relations with Israel? All I'm saying is whatever is happening right now with Israel and the U.S. and the fact that people are waking up to the fact that Israel may not be just the plucky young, David going up against Goliath, the plucky democrat, the only democracy in the Middle East, and we must stand up for them, guys. People are starting to question that narrative at the same time that the Arab states and others are coming together and going, the Muslim states generally in the Middle East and South Asia are coming together and saying we're going to have to provide our own defense. That's going to change things significantly in. Well,
is Pakistan still considered a ally of the U.S. or not?
Have they ever been? Really? It's kind of the question.
Well, they say they are, but I mean,
They're definitely propped up by the U.S., and there is a lot of overlap. I mean, their ISI, their state intelligence service, was founded by and is an adjunct of the CIA. But, it's the ISI and it's the Pakistani military, and, oh yeah, by the way, I guess they have some civilian, politicians, etc., who has real control over that country and which power is in charge. And so, the Taliban and all of that in Afghanistan was essentially run by Pakistan under the nose of the U.S. And was that done with a wink and a nod? And to what extent can the U.S. rein it in if they even wanted to? If Trump was truly make America great again and really wanted to rein it in? Well, now that Pakistan's starting to flex its muscle and become sort of regional player, are they really? I mean, to what extent are they really in bed with the U.S.? Or, how much is that smoke and mirrors? I think we're going to start seeing some of those chips down on the table soon.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about was Harvard pays $500 million to end Trump feud. You look at that a little bit. That got me interested, and I kind of looked at it. Well, they pay $500 million so that they can get their billions of dollars from aid and research programs and grants and all that. So, spend $500 million to make a couple of billion. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to me. This is that just so he can claim success on something. One thing that he did get from Harvard is that they're going to open up some kind of a trade school, kind of a Mike Rowe, learn how to, be an electrician or something. And I'm Harvard graduate of electricity. I know electricity, so I'm, which is better than not, I can tell you that. But this Ivy League negotiation, finding, whatever, is that on your radar?
The Ivy League what?
Colleges, universities, them paying off the government, them losing their grants, right. They're getting, what the deals make.
I think you correctly identify it. So on the Trump side, I mean, he's just looking for political points. I stood up to them and they gave me what I wanted. which is really just a small cut of what the government's paying them anyway, right?
Right.
So that's just political grandstanding. And on the Harvard side, it's just the cost of doing business. Okay, we got to pay
Right.
$500 million to this gangster to keep running our gangster operation, essentially, right? And so they'll, cost of doing business, they'll do it, and they'll still make money. One thing that people fail to appreciate is that Harvard, if it were seen for what it is, which is essentially a company, if it was treated as a corporation, it would be one of the largest corporations in the world. The Harvard endowment is over $53 billion. So it's a huge, huge financial vehicle. And it has its own investment management firm and everything, right? So it's a business. And that's what this is. It's a business shakedown for political grandstanding and theatrics. The point I was trying to make, I was on a panel yesterday discussing free speech with some members of the Independent Media Alliance, and the point came up. I think the fundamental evil here, yes, the Trump administration is trying to get these Ivy Leagues to crack down on protests or whatever, but the core original sin is all of the billions and billions in grant money that the federal government is giving to these institutions. Because that is exactly and precisely what gives them leverage to try to tell them what can and can't happen on campus. Get rid of the federal funding, and guess what? What do the academic institutions care what the administration thinks about them? So, until we address that issue, but no, that isn't the issue that's on the table for anyone. You've got the woke left angry because, look at this crackdown on free speech, by which they mean look at the federal government threatening to withhold federal dollars, and then you've got the right getting excited because we're sticking it to those libs, yay.
Well, we have this one story kind of talks about it. Trump's deal for Gaza drops as U.S. support for Israel craters. Now this is from Ron Paul's Liberty Report, and I don't know if from Japan are you seeing that the American people, Generation Next, this is kind of, what the Charlie Kirk thing was kind of, about, did Israel take him out because he was kind of leading the charge against, or, something like. So this issue of U.S. support for Israel, how are you seeing that continuation or not?
Well, again, I'm only looking at this from the outside, so I can't speak to what the average person on the ground there in America is thinking or feeling. But I can tell you absolutely the perception is changed and the conversation has fundamentally changed. I have never in my entire life seen any sort of even question about U.S. support for Israel. That wasn't even broached even a few years ago in the way that it's being broached today in the mainstream. And it is obviously an issue, and the fact that in the immediate wake of the Kirk killing, whatever that was, immediately people started talking about Israel and, he'd been threatened by some of his Zionist, backers that they were going to cut funding and blah, blah, blah. And the fact that Netanyahu has made video after video, apparently, saying, I had nothing to do with his assassination. What a totally normal video to make.
Right.
At any rate, it shows that the conversation has fundamentally changed. And so, I think, again, Trump, for whatever he is, he's not politically stupid. And I think he knows that there has to be a bone here. And if he ever wants to get that Nobel Peace Prize he's been, campaigning for, well, he better deliver on something like, peace in the Middle East. So I'm sure there's that aspect to it going on from the Trump psychology side. As to what this will actually mean, I'm holding my breath, waiting for the billions and billions of dollars of U.S. aid to Israel to actually stop, but I'm not counting on it.
One of the things that he is pumping for that Nobel Peace Prize, he does his UN speech, and he goes, well, I did this and stopped this war and that, and 6 or 7. Hey, little something for the home team here. And then he's got other people that from these countries that were stopped wars, and they're going, yeah, Trump's the man. We need, Trump. He's our man. Give him a Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm wondering, is it vanity? Is it, he just, he's reverted back to giving a crap what these people think, and that was the problem I think in the first administration. And now he's right back to needs, laurels from these guys. I'm like, what are you thinking? Why is this such? And then we have this story with Pfizer. Here's a good one. Pfizer strikes a deal with him, $70 billion deal with U.S. to expand its mRNA empire. Now, they said, well, we're going to lower drug prices, and U.S. is not going to have to pick up the research tab, and Europe gets them really cheap. We're just ripping off America because we can, and they are. And so they get that low, but we're going to do that mRNA technology, man. We're going to mRNA and change DNA on everybody, man. We got it going on now. That's the deal? As he feels like he'd come out ahead on that? What's the logic on that one?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, do you think there's some kind of grand Make America Great political strategy going on? I just don't see it. No. I don't. I mean, hey, look, I'm not a psychologist. I don't play one on TV. But if I were to psychoanalyze Trump, I don't think you need much more than to think, oh, this is a narcissist who, looks for outside validation in places like the Nobel Peace Prize and things like that. Now everyone will admit that I'm the greatest president, blah, 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 whatever. It's just chest thumping. Who cares? But yeah, I think he thinks that, yes, I'm the guy who, lowered drug prices. So now you can go to TrumpRx.com or whatever they're setting up, and you can get your drugs that way, right? I mean, it's literally branded with his name. I mean, you don't have to psychoanalyze too deeply to find the narcissism right under the surface. But
I'm wondering if that serves a purpose, though. Does he think that helps something?
At the very best, at the most gracious you could be, you could think, well, he wants to burnish his reputation by doing good things for the American people and making sure his name's all over it, right? And so I guess you could say maybe he has a heart of gold and he's truly doing this for the best of the people, blah, blah, blah. But all it shows is, once again, exactly like as we saw in the scamdemic, Operation Warp Speed, brought to you by President Trump. Again, Pfizer and billions of dollars to invest in, cancer vaccines, mRNA vaccines. Yay. Again, I don't understand people who are continuing to defend this as if he's genuinely caring about them and their health. I guess it's a good thing that the Make America Healthy Again movement exists, but what does it even mean if the Trump administration itself is acting directly against that?
Yeah, no, there's something weird. We're not getting the whole story here. And then I want to get into JD and Thiel here in a little bit. But the Netanyahu claims ceasefire deal will allow the Israeli military to stay in Gaza. This Gaza, Netanyahu, Israel, Trump, U.S., Middle East, it's so... I have gotten to the point, like I was already, mostly there anyway, is that I don't care. That's them over there. It's crossed. Why? I raise my hand and go, oh, Mr. Cotte, I got a question. Do I have to care? Is this something I can, not care about? Because I can't possibly care less, really. This is something that's so, why are we involved? There's something else going on, and I'm wondering what you think it is.
Gaza specifically?
Yeah, the whole Israel, Gaza, the Middle East deals are being made, going and bombing Hamas during peace negotiation in Qatar, by Israel. Yeah. I mean, it's just, what the crap?
Well, I mean, I guess you could look at this very small perspective on this, and Netanyahu himself, who, let's not forget, just a few years ago there were mass protests against him and his government, and people were really upset about it, and now not so much, right? People rally around the flag in times of perceived crisis. So just from his own political survival, he's got to strike out and strike big and do big things for his base politically. But beyond that, I think there are bigger things going on there, and I don't think we should discount the obvious, the fact that this is the sort of the religious motivation, the apocalypse, whatever, that people are literally actively believing in and working towards, motivates a lot of the people who are involved in this and a lot of the people who are animated by it, even if not the political class that is manipulating those sorts of things for their own purposes. But I think that's definitely a part of those motivation, and there are people who are actively trying to bring about the apocalypse. Because, the Christian Zionists believe then that's the second coming of Christ, and the Jewish Zionists would be like, well, it's the coming of the Messiah. And Muslims are like, well, we're going to have the big fight, and then, Allah will reign. So everyone has their apocalypse story, and it all centers around Jerusalem and, that area. So that's precisely why it's been the intractable political problem.
Yeah, I think it's just been an excuse. They're using it. It's being a person of faith, you can see how this, stuff happens, evolves, is used at the church, and a lot of them are not. Now the newer generation of younger churches are not buying this as much as you think. It's not. That's why we left a lot of the churches that we went to before. It was like, bomb all the Muslims, let God sort them out kind of attitude. I'm like, who
Have you gone
are
Eastern
you
Orthodox yet? Everyone's going Eastern Orthodox these days.
I don't even know what that means. Thankfully,
not Roman Catholic, but the Eastern Church separated, and it's like the Russian version.
That's one thing. Russia is kind of more Christian than a lot of the Judeo-Christian Western democracies. Of kind of, whoa, man, if Putin's going to claim that one,
and that's why young men in America are flocking to Eastern Orthodoxy in record numbers, because they figure this is the one church that hasn't been like woke, liberal, weirdo, progressive stuff. It's the real stuff. So all right,
go ahead and turn on your video. We'll see how that goes, because I wanted to get you on this one. Okay, this is I want to talk about this. In the last week or two that I've been doing shows, there is I'm definitely concerned about this Palantir thing. It's surveillance. It's here it comes. They're doing whatever they're going to do. Any tech people. Now, of course, we have Patrick Wood, that we've had on quite a bit, technocracy.news. I think we're scheduling him for Friday. We have Scott Ritter's going to be on Friday, so that'll be interesting, talk about that. And, this whole thing about Palantir and surveillance and so on has got a lot of the audience and people that are emailing me, one in particular, but he's not alone, that when I'm talking to people, anyone that's technically savvy, if they're not against any kind of alternative solution to government, then it's kind of like and Ian Davis. We're going to have Ian Davis on. We're looking to have him on again, and so on. And of course, we talk to you. Well, this surveillance state, and a lot of times there are other people in opposition to that. There are high tech guys. That was what Sterling Lujan and I were talking about. Was they're looking for alternative governance, not governments, just different ways that you can use technology like crypto, that's, a thing. So I'm going, there is it's almost a Luddite kind of a mindset that anything technical is potentially can be abused to rule us, but is to be avoided at all costs. And I'm counting on my technology for me being out in the desert to be able to, live the comfortable life that I wish to. I do understand, and Peter Thiel is not a good example, anything, but there is a real, I can feel it upwelling of anti-technology. And I'm wondering where you put the line. What is it that we should be legitimately concerned about as we have technical solutions? Like give me a robot. Hell yeah. Hold this screwdriver. Now, I don't want them to phone home. I want Jarvis, not Alexa. I don't want. But, am I going to avoid any robotic? Like Donna, I don't want a robot. Yeah, I do. Man, I can have them a little smaller, a little weaker, a little slower, a little chained up when I'm sleeping. I mean, there's precautions, but I'm not so. There's something else going on. There's a lot of sci-fi movies that have been, where we went wrong is we allowed AI to get into our, AI, that's a whole nother thing. But, where's the line for you, James?
That's the most important question, perhaps, for the age that we're moving into. And I think it's interesting to note that, obviously, Thiel, in case you haven't noticed, has been out there talking about Antichrist and Armageddon a lot lately.
Yeah,
and
that was
part of
worrisome.
his thesis. Yeah, part of his thesis is that the public has been primed that they are. in a way, they're already ready for the Antichrist to be whatever, some Elon Musk type figure or tech bro figure or something like that. That's kind of what we're expecting at this point, the techno dystopia. And as a result, people can be rallied into, all sorts of horrible enslavement in order to combat the tech bros or whatever. Well, of course, Thiel would be saying that, right? Because he is one of the tech bros. But there is something to that. And this was a point that came up. So I was on an Independent Media Alliance panel maybe a month ago about digital ID and digital technology and things. And as always, as these kinds of conversations always go, they eventually spiral into essentially Luddism. It's basically like, if you can go without your phone 23 hours and 59 minutes a day, that's great. Why not make it 24? That kind of thing. Okay, yeah, fair enough. And you know what? If there are people that can do that and do that, I certainly wouldn't dissuade them from it. Great. Go out and live in the woods and have nothing to do with technology. Preferably don't become the Unabomber, but, live like him, I guess. But, yeah, I don't think that that's realistic for a number of reasons. One of which is that, yes, the technology is not just something that's just kind of been foisted on us. It's clearly that's something that people clamor for and they want and that they can't live without. And I always note the performative contradiction of the people, the keyboard warriors, thumping their chest in the comment section about how pure they are and, they only travel up a hill once a month to turn on their cell phone to get a signal for 2 minutes to check the news or something. And meanwhile, how are you writing this comment on this website? My friend lent me a laptop today so that I could write this comment. Yeah. I don't believe a lot of the chest thumping that goes on. No, everybody is embedded in this right now. And everyone I know certainly has the phone and is, embedded in it, at least to some extent, right? The question is, how can we harness the technology rather than have it harness us? And I think you're on the right track. Yeah, I'd rather have Jarvis than Alexa. I don't want it to phone home. I want my technology. And I certainly I think there are ways forward with that, and I think there are people working towards that. There are people in the freedom movement who are concerned about tech. You should talk to Hakeem Anwar of Above Phone if you haven't already. He's working on stuff like that. You should talk to Gabriel at Libra Solutions. He's working on stuff like that. You should talk to John Snyson, who about OuterNet, right? That kind of stuff, right? So there's lots of people who are working towards that freedom-oriented technology. It does exist. I do have to take the sort of larger view that I think technology does shape us to some extent. Even if we, nominally control it, it is still shaping us. And I think there is something to the fact that media does change us fundamentally, including the medium of the phone, the computer, the tablet, the robot, whatever it is. However it manifests, it's going to change us towards more of the collective hive mind. I think that's, there is something about the internet and the way it's manifesting and the way we're putting ourselves deeper and deeper into it that seems like it's part of that process. So I'm with you. I think a lot of the people that just say Luddism is the answer. Yeah, maybe it is, but I don't think you're going to get very far with it. And I don't think many people are going to be ditching their phones anytime soon. I'm thinking
that there's going to be a big enough market for leave me alone as tech. There's like, I vote no. Same thing, pulling your kids out of government schools, it's along the same lines. And I've had all those guys on.
Actually,
we've talked. Go ahead.
Hold on. You know what? It just occurs to me. This is right up your alley. So I don't know if you heard about this, but a couple of, maybe a month or two ago, there was this guy, I think he talks about tech stuff. Anyway, he had this video that went super viral about Clippy. The idea was to change your profile pic to Clippy. Have you heard about this?
Mm-mm. Change your profile.
Okay, so you remember, your profile pic on social media, change that to Clippy, a picture of Clippy. Do you remember Clippy?
Yeah, the paperclip Microsoft guy.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So that was back in the 90s, right? They had that stupid paperclip that would come up and like, are you trying to write a letter? Or, whatever. It was nonsense. But his point was, you remember Clippy back in the day, he wasn't spying on you and reporting back to Microsoft headquarters. He wasn't trying to, shape your perception or steer you away or censor anything. He was just there to help. And we have to send a message that that's what we're interested in. We don't want this Copilot nonsense or whatever they're trying to infest Windows systems with. We don't want all of this invasive, intrusive spy technology all the time. We want Clippy. We just want the assistant that's there for us that doesn't, is not talking to headquarters and all of that. And as a result, I don't know if you noticed this, but maybe you will. Maybe it's over now. I don't know. But for a few weeks there, I saw the Clippy profile pic in a lot of people's.
Yeah, I
when
did.
People were leaving comments
that's
on
why
YouTube
I
or
know.
whatever, you'd see the Clippy.
Well, that's why I know what you're talking about, because I remember that. But I have been seeing it. It just kind of. So it kind of. I'm going. Yeah, the paperclip. I didn't know what was going on with it. I just happened to see it.
And I think that's right up your alley, because it's the kind of thing, like, it's the visual, the ad campaign essentially.
Got it
for
written
the
down.
mentality.
Okay, so I'm on it. This is what brought up. Find a compatible Linux computer for $200+ roadmap to Linux Part 1 by Rob Braxman. Now, Rob Braxman had, the Brax X phone that I got, above phone. I talked to those guys. All of them have, they do F-Droid, for your apps, and they do, I've played with all this stuff. And I'm not a social media guy. My social media is Freedom's Phoenix. I mean, that keeps me busy enough. I got enough to deal with. So I'm not really, my time suck is, if any of them, it might be Telegram, because we share a lot of our stuff, from Occupy here. Now, but Rob Braxman is going on just recently. Windows Copilot got activated on Windows 11 in its full form, where the AI companion is now watching everything you do on screen and doing screenshots every few seconds. Then it stores your every action historically, truly the biggest blah, 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 blah. Well, he's like, and the solution is what? Linux. The computer that we use in the studio right now is Linux. And the reason is because all the update stuff, every time they update, it breaks stuff, and I have problems, connecting and doing whatever, doing the show. So I'm going, no, hell no. I'm so sick of that crap. So I said, nope, we're doing the studio. We do Linux. Then it's the other apps. It's kind of, I start using Jitsi a little bit more. Zoom is, got it. Well, they updated Zoom, and you got to do this Zoom and how the Zoom. Now, you cannot open a Zoom without scheduling the show and all of the calendar stuff interfaced with your calendar on Google or whatever the hell that they do. Donna does this. I go, oh, what is this? I can't just, nope, got to have it scheduled. So they know your schedule. Now, or before you just going, hey, everybody, everybody on deck. Ernie's talking to somebody. We don't. Hey, he's just going to talk to this guy. It doesn't matter. It's getting worse, and they're penetrating Linux. So I'm going, there's something coming. And it has been a progression since the beginning, because I remember when I got my first email in 1992. Yeah, I think it was 1992, 3, around, it was 93. It was right after the Perot 92 thing was going on and so on. When I got my first email, and then all the stuff that's happened, I got 15 gazillion stories, but the progression has been that you are not able to interface with ones and zeros unless they, them, those know everything that you're ones and zeroing about. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. No matter what you do, it's getting worse. To what end? How do you think this is going to play out, James, before you go?
I have some very interesting things to say about that, but I think we'll have to leave to the next time, because I can only broach them. Let me just say this. If you know everything about what someone has done in the past, what would you be able to discern about what they are going to do in the future?
Just about everything.
That's where I'm thinking.
Yep.
Yeah. Right? Anyway, let's leave it there.
Occupy the land. No matter what comes up, I'm going, you know what? I should be doing something. Oh, I'm good. I'm doing it. You guys do it too. James, thanks for coming on. As always, I almost sort of feel better. You know what's made me feel better? Just, the whole thing of all the dark and gloomy. Name change. Professor James Corbett from CorbettReport.com, open source education.online. Peace, brother. Thanks, man.
Take care. Thank you. Take care.